Good morning, everyone, and welcome once more to Wednesday morning with Innovation Bay. This is a regular event series. We've been doing it since March now, so it's becoming hopefully part of the landscape. I certainly love doing it. I'm your host, Ian Gardner. I'm a founder, co-founder at Innovation Bay. I'm also a VC investment partner with Gelix Ventures. Also in the Innovation Bay team, big call out to them. Faden Stowes, my co-founder. We've got Shan, Claire, Sam, CJ, and Alison as well. We're all working hard. We're trying to support and connect the startup community in Australia. Now we've got a new camera you may have spotted, so I do want to call it out. So it's from Hudley, and I do want to thank Sam and Paul who furnished me with it. So yeah, hopefully it's a little better. I'm not sure whether you want to see my studio setup, but this is kind of what we do. It's also my bedroom. Anyway, thank you all for joining us this morning. Very excited that we're once again using this new platform, Hopin. We'll tell you all about that in a sec. So after the event, we are going to do some virtual networking. It's part of what we've been missing, I guess, with too much of this virtual event. So yeah, let's try and meet some new people. So we'll explain a bit more about that later. For those that are new here or not familiar with Innovation Bay, we are the longest running community for founders and investors across Australia. Our mission is to support founders on their journey from idea to IPO and beyond. And we do this through a range of events, programs, and content like this designed to enable people to connect, learn, and grow. So a little bit more about Hopin, which is this platform we're on. Yeah, so it's basically trying to replicate a little bit of what you get at a physical event. So you can kind of choose where to go, who you might want to chat to. Right now, this is the main stage. We're going to be holding the panel discussion in a second. When the event's over, we're going to switch on the sessions and networking. So it's a way of, the sessions are group chats and the networking is one-to-one. So you can basically randomly hook up with someone in the one-to-one, and there's a time slot. I think it's 3 minutes, but you can extend it. It's just a great chance to meet some fun people. So yeah, hopefully you'll hang around afterwards and try that out. Big thank you, as ever, to our wonderful sponsors. So AWS, IAG, Farmark Ventures, KPMG's High Growth Ventures, and Macquarie Bank. They are supporting us and they support the ecosystem, and we really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much to them. So like before I get the panel up to talk, this is today's topic. I mean, if you haven't noticed, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. And if you're tuning in from Melbourne, we're sorry that you're having to go through the trauma of the further lockdowns, but hopefully you'll come out the other side all right. But ultimately, digital health, telehealth have taken a front seat. So we've got a fantastic panel to talk through this. COVID-19 is re-emphasized remote diagnosis, consultation, and treatment. So as I say, we have great people to talk about that. And technology really is at the heart of the new patient-centric future for healthcare. So we want interactivity if we can. So there is a chat panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you want to ask a question, jump in there and put it there, and we will pick it up and hopefully get that to the panel. So I am going to stop my slide share and ask the panel to come on up to the stage to join me, and let me just do a bit of an intro to them. Actually, while they're coming up, I'm just going to move my camera so we get a slightly different view. There we go. And then move that over there so I can actually talk and see the panel all at the same time, because this screen over here is small and the other one. Welcome, everyone. Let me just run through who they are. So David Kennington, he's first on the screen. So CMO of Nuheara. You're combining high-end headset features with sophisticated hearing technology for affordable hearing solutions. David is based in Perth. So thank you for getting up early to join us, David.
You're welcome, man.
Elliot Smith. Elliot's the CEO and founder of Maxwell Plus, which is a precision screening for prostate cancer using AI for personal results. So I'm a customer because I'm in that, middle-aged man area. So nothing untoward's been found yet. Thank you, Elliot. Elliot's also a Summit Club member. So welcome to Elliot. Elliot's also in Brisbane, so we have a bit of a nationwide panel here. Kelly Constable, she's a venture partner, relatively new, I think, venture partner at One Ventures. She's also founded Olus Partners with a mission to embrace startups that harness the potential to transform healthcare issues on a global scale. So pretty amazing CV, which we'll probably get into in a sec. But Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
And finally, but certainly by no means least, Sylvia Pfeiffer has got a great business. I've known Sylvia for a long time, and it's great to see your progression, Sylvia. Co-founder and CEO at Covet, which is providing an easy and reliable telehealth software platform that's secure and it's got end-to-end encryption. And I know it works because I actually went and saw the doctor using Covet.
Excellent.
So, wonderful to say.
Morning.
Yeah, so again, just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, please jump in the chat and let's do that. All right, let me get started. So look, broad questions to start with, and it really is around how COVID has affected your business and the way that you are looking at the world. So why don't I start with you, Sylvia?
Sure. So Covet was growing before the pandemic. We were doing about 300 consultations a day, which we were really quite proud of, but nothing prepared us for the change that COVID would bring. And we went within the course of 2 to 3 weeks, we went from those 300 consultations a day to 25,000 consultations a day. So a massive growth. And with that, we had a massive growth in customer support calls. Every single clinician in Australia was looking for a platform, wanted to experience Covet, wanted to ask their questions. So in those 2 weeks, I hired about 10 people. More than doubling the size of the team. And that kept going. We went from 7 people before the crisis to now about 35. So it's been a massive boom for us. Who would have known that it takes a pandemic to make telehealth work?
I want to stick on that because, I mean, that's a fascinating story beyond the health. I mean, there's a bunch of startups in the call, but just, that story of scaling your business with pretty much an external shock. I mean, it's a what we call a high quality problem, but it's still a problem. So how did you do it?
Well, we were lucky enough, or foresightful enough to have been in AWS and to have built our systems for scale with auto scaling, etc. But basically, the whole tech team during that time had to really focus on scaling up. We had a couple of outages, so from a technical point of view, it was not easy to get to that scale. Those outages were all self-caused, bugs that wouldn't appear when you've got small usage, but that really hit home when thousands of people are trying to hit your services. And we got through that. I don't think we've had. Well, we had a couple of big outages and, we were very sorry for our customers because they wanted to scale their businesses during that time. And it was really hard on everyone, including our customer success team. But we got through it. And no outage was longer than a couple of hours, which was really helpful.
And just quickly, I mean, in terms of cash, did you have to lean on your backers for that, or were you okay?
Financially, we were actually doing quite well. I had a bit of money on the back burner, which I was thinking about how to apply the best way to scale. And so I didn't actually hesitate in hiring. I went, okay, this is going to last us. We're gonna get through this. I'm just going to hire people as quickly as possible. Yeah. Of course, everyone that signed up eventually, or lots of these people eventually, after 2 weeks of trial, actually turned into paying customers as well. So within 2 weeks, we actually had income growth as well. And that was massive. So we actually never had a financial problem. I was in the middle of raising a convertible note, and we did close that convertible note during that time as well. But it turned out we actually didn't need that money. There was enough money coming in. We were revenue positive.
Yeah, I bet those investors are happy.
Very. We're currently raising a Series A, so yes.
Well, good on you. All right, well, that's a terrific story. David, why don't I jump to you? So, have you got a similar story, or how's it been for you?
Yeah, so I define what's happened since March as 5 years of disruption happening in 5 months, and it pretty much happened in 3 weeks. We operate in an industry where it completely collapsed i.e. the hearing health industry. So no one was going into audiology offices. People were looking for in-home support and hearing health management. We set ourselves up a couple of years ago to be completely direct to consumer, or at least 95% of our revenue coming from direct to consumer. And we positioned ourselves as a early stage hearing health solution. So with people not wanting to go into audiology offices, they turn to us as a solution to start their hearing health journey. So we've continued to grow rapidly since COVID. The industry is still trying to sort itself out, but we continue to grow globally. About 95% of our revenue is coming out of Australia now, outside of Australia, and it's primarily direct to consumer. So we've done very well through COVID.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Elliot, what about you? How are things in Maxwell Plus world?
They're good. I mean, I think we've seen similar trends in that we actually crunched these numbers recently. In the first 3 months of lockdown, we estimated that about 40,000 men avoided going and getting a PSA test in that time, just based on the Medicare claims during that period. And, you know, we started to see that people are looking for different options. People don't want to go into the clinics because, you know, obvious reasons, social distancing, also just going to a clinic is rarely a fun experience. So we've seen a lot of people look for alternatives. And, you know, they're coming to us, which is a nice change and, you know, building that up. Prior to COVID, a lot of our focus was actually running corporate programs. So going on site, testing men in a corporate environment. But we had to rapidly shift between that and now, you know, similarly to David, we're primarily direct to consumer, because naturally going on the work sites during a lockdown was just off the table. But there was a lot of people, you know, at home looking for healthcare. So we've really transformed the business from what I suppose could have been a B2B type focus, selling to corporates, now really to direct to consumer. It's been a lot of fun. It's something I've really enjoyed. But I think, yeah, as everybody here seems to have done, that rapid adaptation to this crisis has, you know, led to some interesting changes and changes ultimately, I think, that'll be for the better for us.
Yeah, that's great. Kelly, I wanted to leave you to last with this one because I think you've got a pretty interesting backstory. So I'd love to hear maybe if you could just give us a bit of a potted history to you. So you're relatively new. You're at One Ventures, so you're an investor. So just tell us about you and maybe One Ventures, and then finally, you know, the impact of COVID on your outlook.
Sure. So I spent 25 years in the pharmaceutical industry on the commercial side, so launching assets in various conditions at Abbott and Amgen. And then my last 10 years there in parallel, I was one of the founders of their digital health business. So I've launched and developed various products for osteoporosis, co-founded a precision oncology business, which was using data and AI to predict impact of chemotherapy on patients. So I did that in the US and Europe for Amgen. In parallel, my partner and I are investors in med tech startups. So he's co-founded 2 companies in the US. One is pardon the terminology, a vacuum for stroke. So that company is in Minneapolis. The other company is a company that treats animal tissues for cardiovascular surgery. So we've got a portfolio of investments. Here in Australia, we came here from America. I'm obviously not a local. About 3.5 years ago, I left corporate America to be a full-time entrepreneur. And we've co-founded a business here to help bring commercialization skills around to really smart scientists and really smart inventors to help with that commercialization of good science and to take it out of Australia. And so I recently joined One Ventures. I'm a part-time venture partner there. In addition, I head up strategy for a precision oncology platform here that spun out of the Garvin and sit on a couple of boards. So try to spread across medical devices as well as biotech and digital health.
What's your view on the COVID situation and how that's affected your outlook?
Sure. So I'll give 3 examples I think are most relevant to this audience. First is I'm on the board of directors of a company called Oculo, which is a virtual eye platform in Victoria. Fantastic CEO, successful company, was facilitating referrals from optometry to ophthalmology. And when COVID hit, we accelerated the time to the US market. So that company was planning to go to the US. And we accelerated product development to focus on a virtual eye platform that instead of just doing referrals, it enables the telehealth consults with patients. So similar to the comments made by Elliot, right, a number of patients have been not making their appointments, and particularly in the US, there's optometrists and ophthalmologists completely shut down. So you have this backlog of patients in need of care. So I would say COVID was extremely positive for Oculo in that it accelerated the product development and therefore the launch into the US market at a time where the US is really more acceptance and telehealth is really growing. And my perspective on that, I was a advisor at the digital health expert for Amgen's venture investment fund over 10 years ago when digital health was really getting going. And I would say the change, you know, as part of Oculo, seeing the change for the appetite, seeing the investors' response to platforms in this environment has grown exponentially, which is great to see.
Yeah.
On the capital side, I would say that most of the feedback, I have 3 companies in my portfolio that are raising capital between Australia and the US. And most of the comments that we've heard from either M&A advisors, venture capitalists is that, you know, it's still because of technology, we can still pitch. It's taking a bit longer. And most of the people on the capital side are saying what they miss is that we all know that investment is often aligned with the people. And something that's really challenging is get a sense for people on tech. Yeah. And so they have started, well, we all know capital is not necessarily slowing down in closing capital. It's taking longer to get there and struggling with getting to know the people. And then my other, I guess, positive example I'm going to give you quickly is that Amico, which is the precision oncology clinical trials platform out of the Garvin, is now a national platform. And I'd say from that perspective, we engage R&D of the global pharmaceutical companies. And we're really, COVID's given us the opportunity to position Australia as the clean room, if you will, given our COVID circumstance. You know, compared to the United States, we're much more attractive for clinical trials. And a number of clinical trials have been halted and slowed down. So we're really working hard across the ecosystem to help position Australia as the opportunity to keep clinical trials going or to resort some of the trials here in Australia that would have typically gone to the UK or the US.
Yeah. All right. Look, that was terrific, and thank you. All right, let me jump, Sylvia. I want to jump back to you. And Elliot touched on this at the start. I mean, going to the doctor is risky, even without COVID. I remember when I was a kid, like my mum kind of forced me to hang out with a buddy because he had chicken pox. But you know, you'd go to, you know, and I think he picked it up from the doctor's surgery. So you go to the doctor, there are risks. Like, do we still need to visit a doctor nowadays?
So Medicare brought in reimbursements for telehealth, and when they say telehealth, they actually mean both phone calls and video calls. So when we talk about GP visits, we can actually get our phone calls and our video calls with our GP reimbursed nowadays. So for a lot of things, we don't really need to go to the doctor anymore. We can just pick up the phone, have a consultation, and some of the GPs have finally also embraced video calls. I'll be quite frank, only about 3 or 4% of the GP visits are being done and reimbursed on Medicare. About 96 or 97% are still being done via phone. And that's quite obvious why, because, you know, GPs have never really had a means for reimbursing telehealth consultations. So they weren't ready when COVID hit. There was no technology. You couldn't buy a webcam if you wanted to, you know. So getting a GP clinic set up was a technology limitation, was a training limitation. And also, they didn't really know whether that reimbursement will persist.
I mean, I find it surprising. Like, you know, I don't have too many medical issues, but when you do go in, like, you're surrounded by, you know, MRI machines and, you know, incredible heart detect. I mean, the technology they use in terms of the diagnosis and treatment is amazing. And then you go out to the reception, and they use a fax machine. I mean. Yeah. And they phone you.
You're absolutely right. The digital transformation.
Why is it that doctors are so bad at the basics of technology, but so good at the advanced stuff?
Yeah, diagnostics are very important in healthcare, diagnostics and treatment, and that's where we've traditionally invested a lot of money. It happens a lot in hospitals, and obviously that's going into the smaller practices as well. Digitizing workflows, digitizing the management of patient records, on the other hand, has not quite seen the same kind of investment. I mean, I'm a bit hesitant here saying that because, of course, the National Health Record project has spent a lot of money, but individual practices haven't quite spent as much money on digitizing their practices and really investing in digital transformation of their business as they would have in buying, modern diagnostic devices.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Ian, you've got a situation where that's not the priority for most medical practitioners. They are not business people. They're not entrepreneurs. They got into the profession because they want to help people. And then they align themselves with medical device companies that sell them really sophisticated equipment that essentially makes their job easier or it helps them to deliver a service. But at the end of the day, they're not thinking about how to run a business effectively and profitably. And that's the issue, and that's the gap that they're vulnerable.
Yeah, but I mean, surprised because maybe it's because like we're all entrepreneurs and thinking about the customer experience, but the patient experience is better when you've got a slick, a waiting room and not fax and not having to go to the GP in order to get your, and put yourself at risk to get a report to the specialist or a referral to the specialist. So anyway, I just find it surprising that they're a little bit behind the times.
I've spoken to a lot of families that have now experienced telehealth, particularly with their smaller children, and they all say, I never want to take my children to the doctor again. When I just want to get them on this video call. I don't have to pack up this child, make sure that somebody looks after the other children, go into a waiting area where they might catch something else, sit around with a squealing child. It's so much better. They want to keep on doing telehealth, want to keep on doing video and phone calls with their GP. And I think the GPs have finally realized that it's not as complicated as they might have thought, that there is a way forward. And there's even Medicare. So Medicare has a big role to play here. If they get paid for doing that work, then they'll do it as well. And that's the situation that we're in right now. Yeah. Actually, Max Lynham has just jumped in the chat to say there's antiquated legal reasons that still use fax machines and a few other things. So to the doctor's defense, thank you, Max. That's a good comment. David, I want to jump back to you. So look, Australia's, when you think about Australian tech, fairly up in the, certainly the top 10 would be ResMed and Cochlear in terms of, breakout successful tech success stories. How are we doing? Does Australia punch above its weight generally, or is ResMed and Cochlear outliers?
Look, I think it's a really good question. I think there's some hidden gems in the Australian ecosystem, and I think YouHear is one of them. We're essentially taking medical device technology and deploying it into a hearable device like I'm wearing right now that bridges the gap between sophisticated hearing tech and high-end Bluetooth headsets. Obviously we're a hardware and software company. We've got 35 people in Perth, about 25 of them in the engineering department. We've got about 6 PhDs. They're all world-class talent. We have innovated and commercialized more cost-effective than anyone could do what we've done in the US. And that's a proven fact because when we started the company, there were probably at least half a dozen other startups in our space who most of them aren't around, but we are. So I think that the Australian ecosystem is rich with talent. It's the classic issue of being able to commercialize on the global stage, and therein lies the challenge. But we've been able to do it pretty successfully, and it's probably because of the background of myself and my co-founder who have done this a couple of times before. But medical device, hey, hardware's hard. And medical device is hard, so you've got to have a pretty thick backbone to get into it.
Yeah, and Kelly, I should jump to you in this one. I mean, like you took you've moved from the US to Australia, and you are focused in this space. So do you feel that Australia is punching above our weight or should punch above our weight globally?
I think that we scientifically punch above our weight. I think fantastic. There's a lot of really good inventions. And globally, when I left the US, I asked all my network, what do you think about when I say Australia? And they'd say world-class science, no question. I think the gap where we really struggle is that we don't have enough commercial talent to wrap around that invention and to commercialize. Just backing up what David said, if we had a number of Davids, then I think we would be punching above our weight. But without the infrastructure of big companies such as Cochlear's, we also don't have a lot of big companies that give people that commercial talent and that commercial experience. Just getting an MBA will give you the framework, but I think commercial leaders are going to do better as CEOs or head of strategy if they've had a number of experiences, and we just don't offer that as much. I think that's where the real gap is. If we find companies I can think of a couple of companies where we need to find CEOs with commercial background, it's really tough to find that. So we just have a shortfall. So I don't want to say we're not punching above our weight, but I think the problem we're trying to solve in government, across the venture capital firms, and with the network is trying to, how do we find more commercialization so we can make sure we sync that up with the science? Yeah.
Actually, I might just stick with you, Kelly, and talk more generally about just investing in med tech or health tech. I mean, I'm an investor, and one of the things we sometimes talk about is that we're not that keen on health tech or med tech because we don't understand the regulations. We don't understand. It feels like a different business. It's regulated. The timescales can be really long. I mean, why is it hard to invest in this, or is it hard to invest? Just give us the investor perspective on health tech investment.
Sure. I think it's a great question because I've got a couple of digital health companies, right, that go pitching for tech investors. Tech investors might be curious, or often they might put money in because they're really early because they're passionate about the cause. A family member's had cancer, a family member's been affected by the condition. But we start to get to A and B rounds. Those tech investors do get a bit skittish about the healthcare part of it. And likewise, in digital health in particular, and again, I've been around for 25 years. I remember trying to make that transition. When you're used to investing in drugs, the returns are massive. And then all of a sudden you get to this digital health proposition and it looks so different than the majority of, for 100 years, we've been investing in something that looks like a biotech asset, right? So those assets are at least a couple billion. So I think that transition has been tough. And you're starting to see more specialized venture capital and digital health in particular in the US. And there's a bit here in Australia as well. But I think that tech investors should not be afraid of the regulations. You got to remember, for those of us in healthcare, that's just part of it. We've been doing that for years. Regulations for digital health are quite simple. But I think it's making that transition. I don't think that, and there's experts. It's easy to find experts in the space. Every one of our companies, you can hire a regulatory expert to help you navigate that regulation. And I think probably the business returns can be bigger if you can crack it in healthcare. The returns are probably bigger, but the business model is also a bit different, right? So if you're used to having a B2C business, and maybe you're going to have a viral growth, the business model and the commercialization for a health tech product where you're selling it into a hospital system, that's your paying customer, but the product, the end user is often the patient. So that kind of model is a little bit more dynamic than a tech business that either is B2B, B2C. We have the patient as well as the stakeholder, which is the system. But I don't think, I think we need more tech sophistication. We need more tech money in the health sector. We're the latest adopters of technology, but we need people such as yourself. We need smart money coming from that side, which would help accelerate the sophistication and the integration of technology in the community.
All right. No, that's a good answer.
No pressure.
I'll revisit that one.
Yeah.
A reminder to the audience, we are looking for questions. We've had a few good ones coming in, so I'm going to jump to them in a sec. But Ellie, I wanted to ask you, so I mean, you've got an interesting business because, I mean, in some ways it's computer vision. You're using that to help treat diagnosis, but it's also in medtech, and you're dealing with a big problem. I mean, like every male, I believe, you can tell me the stats, but every male over 40 or something should go and have their prostate checked because it's a big risk for males. So, but it's got a bit of a stigma. You got your finger up the bum, and everyone's worried about it, and they don't want to necessarily deal with it. I mean, are there other preventable issues that you feel should be getting focused from this sector? Taking your meds in time, getting them auto delivered. Because as you get older, you need to take more meds, and it's just a challenge. So, any perspectives on that?
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question, and we're starting to see trends in that area. I mean, the term that seems to be getting thrown around is this idea of like full stack healthcare, where it's companies. I think Maxwell would fall into this category, where they take just one condition and try and do it end to end. And for some, that may be everything from, I guess, diagnosis, prescription, and then delivery of medication just in that one niche area. And I think, personally, as technology starts to become a bigger part of the diagnostic process, I think we're going to see more companies and more technologies go down that path. And I suppose the generalization of things like, the hospital and the GP clinic will remain. But for particular services, I mean, think skin checks, breast checks, other specialized services, we're going to see that specialization. And, for conditions like prostate cancer, 1 in 6 men in their lifetime. So, yeah, it certainly does affect a lot of people. One of the things that we're up against is not necessarily competition, but it's apathy. And I think anybody in the sort of B2C health tech space is more often battling the fact that for these issues where, prostate cancer is not only not preventative, but if you get it diagnosed early, the outcomes are like 98, 99% survival rate.
Yeah.
We're not battling, them going somewhere else. It's the fact that people, if they're feeling fine and feeling healthy, and prostate cancer is mainly asymptomatic till the later stages, it just don't do anything a lot of the time. And changing that consumer behavior and consumer/patient behavior is, I think, a really interesting challenge. And I think it's going to be hard to do with your traditional GP clinic model. But I think technology has a unique advantage here in that, the way we're interacting with technology presents this interesting opportunity to say, well, look, you can also start to take care of yourself in a very unobtrusive way that, you can get checked for something like prostate cancer and be talking to a doctor in under 5 minutes on your phone, and compare that to, often 20 minutes to work out how to use the booking function on your GP's website. Yeah. It's kind of just a whole different world, and it's one that really, excites us at Maxwell, certainly.
All right, Elliot, I'm going to allow you to give us a plug. So for the older gentlemen out there listening, what should they do?
Yeah, look, so if you're over 50 or over 40 and have cancer in your family, maxwellplus.com will connect you with a doctor in literally 5 minutes. You can get tested. It's, it's as simple as that. So there's wonderful things happening in the background. We've equipped these doctors with some AI that we've developed, helps them look through blood test and medical imaging data, in more detail than ever before. But the thing I try and stress to people, especially because it's Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, is that we aim to be ridiculously easy.
Yeah.
So there's just like no, booking an appointment kind of mentality with us.
Yeah. As I said at the top of the hour, I have done it and it was easy. So everyone do it and look after yourself. All right, let's move on. So a question from Priyanka. This is for Sylvia. Are you working with the Australian government to achieve greater adoption of telehealth? Also, is the Australian government acknowledging the efficiencies that telehealth is bringing to healthcare?
Well, we work through Health Direct with the Australian government. I don't know if you're aware that Health Direct is offering our platforms. They're a licensor of our platform to all GPs in Australia for free. So that's a big support from the Australian government to get all the GPs comfortable with doing video consultations. And they can actually get a free platform just by talking to their PHN and being signed up through the Health Direct platform. We're also working through Health Direct on helping the state health departments digitize So, for example, Victoria, all the public hospitals in Victoria have access to the Health Direct platform for free. The Victorian government is essentially paying for it, and it's being used massively across Victoria, just in outpatient clinics, and to stop people from having to go and see the clinicians face to face. So yeah, we're doing what we can.
All right, let's take another question. Came in from Kim Chandler McLeod. She's a regular guest. Hi, Kim. Patient-centric. So this is around data, and the regulations around it. So the reality is that patients, whenever you go to the doctor, there's a bunch of data generated, which you need because it's good for the doctors, good for the patients. But what are the issues surrounding data storage, management, distribution, etc.? So I don't know who wants to take that one. Kelly's smiling, so maybe I'll jump to you.
Well, I was going to suggest, Sylvia, with your cloud management, you might want to technically go first. So this is a bit of my hot topic for me. But Sylvia, maybe you could comment on how do you find that with the cloud, and then I'll happily comment. But I'm interested in the technical, how you're managing that, or how you are seeing the acceptance of it.
I don't want to be the one always talking, but very quickly, there are lots of ways of keeping data safe, even in cloud storage. There's encryption. We encrypt at rest, and we encrypt on transmission. And this is one of the key things that we do at Coveo, really looking after patients' data and making sure that this is encrypted and cannot easily be accessed by anyone who is not allowed to.
All right, cool. Kelly?
Yeah, well, I'd say, look, I've been, as I said before, working in data and artificial intelligence and biotech and digital health for, over 10 years now. And I think the value that data generates around earlier diagnosis, how we can use that from a scientific perspective on population management. I just think the value of data far exceeds our concerns around the risk. And I was speaking at Oz Biotech last year. I think there's a couple hundred people in the room. And I asked the audience, how many people believe that your data right now is truly secure? If I wanted to get access to your data, do you believe I can? And 99% of the room raises their hand. So I don't know if this is a societal push that we've made, but if you really stop and think about it, I think that our data is at risk, and it's no different. There's no such thing as 100% secure data in any realm. You can only get to 98% security. It can always be hacked. But I think the value far exceeds the risk. And there's multiple ways, to Sylvia's point. I also think we haven't done a good job educating the public on how you can encrypt the data, the privacy regulations around it, how you can de-identify the data. I mean, there's just so much utility of that. And I don't know whose responsibility is to drive that education, but I think we don't have the knowledge we need to understand the value of it medically.
Yeah.
To your point, though, also, it's not just the technical measures that you have to take to keep data secure. It's also the human side of things. Often it's actually the humans that get attacked. Somebody who gives their password away thinking that, they're doing the right thing, but they were actually tricked into offering somebody access. It's never just the technology that makes things crash. There's often human error involved somewhere, and so it's a lot about educating people as well around security measures.
Yeah, Elliot, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on this data side. If not, we can move on. All right, let's keep rolling. David, I might jump to you. There's a question. I used to work for AWS, so I mean, Amazon is everywhere. I mean, it's one of the world's biggest companies. I mean, look at the share price. It's just and it's in everything. But there's a rumor that it's going to be entering this wearable health market. So any thoughts on this? I mean, is there anything that they won't enter?
Yeah, I've got some interesting thoughts about that, Ian. About 4 years ago. Actually, 3 years ago, I was in Silicon Valley with my chief product officer, and we're in the Amazon offices there with probably about 5 of their engineers in the hearable space who just drilled us for questions and trying to tap our brains on how to build a great hearable product, because we were one of the pioneers back in those days. Well, it took them 3 years, and they brought out a pretty average product as a hearable solution. So, yes, Amazon's everywhere, Apple's everywhere, Google's everywhere. They're all competing in the hearable space, but it comes back to specialization. You've got to be really, really good at what you do and not be good at everything. And we've just happened to find a niche that we are world class, and we can stay ahead of the curve. So look, you start a business like this with an understanding that the big guys are going to get into it. We knew that 5 years ago when we started the company. Just so happens that the big guys have validated our vision, but we're still ahead of them. This product that I'm wearing in my ears is by far the world's most advanced hearable, more advanced than anything Google and Apple have produced. So we just have to stay really, really focused on what we're doing, deliver a great customer experience, and own your niche. And the competition will be out there. So
and there's so many.
We really don't give it a lot of thought, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, look at Zoom. I mean, most people would have looked at Zoom and discounted it, saying, "Oh, well, Google and Microsoft are going to enter this space." And I mean, Zoom they had the best product, and they just executed brilliantly on it. And look at their share price.
Well, look, Ian, in our case, Apple AirPods really made hearables socially acceptable, right? And we have really ridden on the backs of that sort of public awareness because of Apple. We don't have to own 60% of the market. We can own 2% of the market and have a really, really successful business. So competition's good. And Zachary just jumped in the chat saying the most feared words in the English language are Amazon has entered your industry. Look, maybe there's a counter argument to that, which is that if Amazon or any of those big players are prepared to enter your industry, the industry is gigantic. And there's plenty of room for niche players as well. So in some ways, that could be a validation rather than a threat. Yeah, that's how we see it.
Yeah. All right, let's maybe let's roll through. If there's other questions coming in, let's keep them rolling. Let's talk about the founder journey. So Elliot, I want to jump back to you. So you're still relatively young. I know that. You've been around since 2016, so it's a fairly new company. There might be a bunch of up-and-coming tech founders listening in here. So do you want to just touch on your founder journey, what you found, whether you do it again? Just tell us about your founder journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to start with, 2016 feels like a lifetime ago. So if you're about to start a company, expect 4 years to feel like 40.
Well, your hair's still dark and it's not falling out, so you're doing all right, mate.
Yeah. Well, it's getting grayer by the day. But no, look, I mean, this is my second medtech startup. I had a hardware, a devices startup. So David, I know your pain in getting medtech to the market. I guess I've always just sort of had this itch to take what I know in engineering. My background is engineering, biomedical engineering, specifically around medical imaging, but just to take that and try and find a way to do some good in the world. And I think it's a exciting thing in health tech that you can't necessarily get anywhere else, is that, everybody wants to say that their startup is changing the world, saving lives and things like that. But, in health tech startups, you can point to people whose lives are drastically changed and maybe even saved because of your company. And that's a very rewarding experience. It's a longer journey than, if we're building, whatever the meme is, Uber for dogs or whatever else. You can get to market a lot faster. There is less regulation and all that sort of stuff. But, mirroring what Kelly said before, it's just part of the game. It's part of the process. And once you're on the other side of it, it's also puts you at a huge competitive advantage to other people. Once you've got that regulatory approval, once you're in market, that there's a wall that other people have to overcome. So I know medtech can be scary. One thing I see too often, I think, is people diluting an originally quite ambitious medtech vision because the med side of it seems scary, and it becomes more and more and more lifestyle, less relevant. And then sort of the medtech aspect disappears. And, sometimes there are good reasons to do that, but I'd certainly warn people not to do that just because it's hard to do medtech, because you can have such an impact and really change things for a lot of people.
Yeah. We haven't mentioned Theranos. I mean, that was a fairly high profile. Yeah, like Kelly's going, oh, don't about that. I mean, that was a hugely high profile. If you haven't heard of it, Elizabeth Holmes was a very young Stanford graduate founder, super well connected, and basically created this fraud. And it just, you know, there's a book that came out called Bad Blood, which was just a brilliant book, great title, great author, riveting story. I think they're making a movie out of it. Kelly, any thoughts? I mean, has this polluted the medtech investment, or was it just, it could have been in any industry and it just happened to be in medtech that this fraud was perpetrated?
Well, I think we have more unicorns in Silicon Valley, right? There's a whole unicorn issue, and I think that it corrupted quite a bit. And if you guys don't want to read the book, I think there's also something on Netflix. You can watch a movie, which is pretty good.
Yeah, right.
You know, does it corrupt it? But at the same time, I would say because that particular CEO, she was pushed forward by the media and the celebratory, and she was on the cover of magazines. So we made our own problem by the media pushing and making her a celebrity instead of focusing on the business.
Yeah.
And I think that made it much worse. But I was going to comment on the founder side, just having seen so many companies and having done it ourselves with my partner. I think I'd like to take the time to say this. One of the biggest risks we see of founders is, particularly from Australia, because we work with scientists where they've gotten a lot of grants. I mean, this happens everywhere. It's not just Australia, but we're seeing a lot of things that the early invention has come out of grant money. That grant money, the transition from a grant to a venture capital money is drastic. And so I guess the message I try to send whenever I can to founders is make sure that you have the talent, advisors, or mentors, people like David and Elliot around you to understand that transition. A lot of people don't qualify for grants or go through Death Valley, don't qualify for capital is because they don't understand the difference. And then the second thing I would say is from a phase perspective, when you're a founder, you can often attract friends and family money for your seed round. And that comes from passion. I think most of the times when we talk to founders of medtech companies, they have gotten money from, as I said earlier, somebody who is passionate about the medical proposition here. And so those people, some founders will associate that money that comes in pretty easy in that round, and they'll behave the same way as a CEO, or they won't increase their expectations. And when they go after a Series A round or Series B round, the expectations with that money are drastically different. You go from passion funding to having to have a very sophisticated business plan. You have to understand the regulatory pathway. You have to understand reimbursement. You got to understand the capital investment proposition. And so I think from a founder journey, that's probably where we would see the most of the companies that don't make it is because they don't cross that chasm.
Yeah.
So
Can I just add one thing to that? Really good point, Kelly. I think the speed to market is the most important thing in any industry, particularly in you know, med device, med tech, or, you know, disruptors of med tech. I see too many examples of companies getting grants and, you know, talking about you know, the pre-commercialization stage, and not enough about how quickly you want to get this product to market, right? I mean, in our case, we went from working wearable prototype to product in market in 12 months. And we had a lot of risk to do it, but we had to do it because we knew we had this time opening that if we just sat around and took our time, we'd lose the opportunity. So to me, it's all about getting to market as quickly as possible and taking a few risks to get there. You may not have a 100% perfect product, but if your belief is you're delivering a product that's going to solve major problems, get to market as quickly as possible. And you need capital to do that. That's a whole other subject in Australia, because you need a lot of capital to do that. So, but
that's what we as venture capitalists want to hear, though, is your understanding of time to market. Whereas I can't tell you how many times I'll ask people about the competitive landscape, how differentiated is it, hurry up. And as I said, those things are very synonymous, right? With venture capital, we want it in the market as fast as possible as well. And we want differentiation. That's that whole commercial umbrella that I think sometimes people, they might've been funded for 6 years on grants, and there is no speed on grants, right? And there's no interim accountability steps. And so oftentimes, to your point, David, they come to us and I go, they give us a vision, but you go, well, how are you going to get to market? I know you want to get to market. How are you going to get to market? And that's where that commercialization really falls apart, and we need that granularity to believe that it'll get there as fast as possible.
Yeah, and regulations are there to be disrupted, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
John.
All right, look, we've got a ton of questions now coming in, so let's sort of up the pace in the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes. So there's one from Tony Rothaker. Now, I don't think anyone here is an expert in the aged care system, so I'll throw to you, Sylvia, on this, but I'll just read it out. So aged care has seen the biggest impact from COVID. Where do you see your service product helping the aged care sector, and what changes are you going to see in the near future?
The aged care sector is really seeing a big change right now. There's actually less people in aged care homes now than there were at the beginning of the year. People are obviously reluctant to stay in those centers and are actually coming back to their families at times. There is a big change in the industry also through the aged care review that the government did, the Aged Care Commission. Lots of people don't really want to spend the rest of their life or the end of their life in a center where they basically feel like they're being locked up and the only way out is death. So there's going to be a change in that industry for more home care. People will be doing more at home and will be looking for more support in their homes. And that's exactly what we're testing right now in the COVID crisis. You know, everyone is kind of being at home and not leaving their homes. When you're older, you'll find it harder to leave your home. So you'll want to have more digital support, more support through telehealth by your clinicians. You know, if your physiotherapist can come to visit you on your big screen TV, and you can do your physiotherapy exercises in front of the TV, rather than the physiotherapist having to drive around and visit each one of these patients. That'll make that physiotherapist more efficient and will actually allow them to have a business that is sustainable, and you can still get your care. So you don't really need to go into an aged care home to do this. So there's lots of changes and lots of support we can provide as digital healthcare businesses to this change that's happening in aged care. And this goes, you know, Elliot's work applies to that. David's work applies to that. I think there's lots we do in aged care, which incidentally also applies to chronic illnesses. So chronic illnesses with mental health people that also don't want to leave their homes. You know, it's a really interesting time right now for the change in healthcare to a more digital based future, which COVID has induced, but which will have wide impact across everything we do in healthcare. Yep.
All right, thank you, Sylvia. All right, let's take a couple more. So Ash van der Spuy, hey Ash, what is the impact of medicine having been designed on men and women being different? You know, so the fact is that men and women are different, but the health industry is kind of designed in the same context. So I'm no expert in this. So Kelly.
You might be asking that, so historically, clinical trials for drug development were biased towards white men over a certain age. And so I think it's probably been, so great question, why did that happen? We could pontificate on that. I'm not sure the rationale, but it is a fact that we scientifically realized that there wasn't a lot of heterogeneity from an ethnic background, male, female, age. And I guess in simple terms, the rigidity of those clinical trials is so strict, right? Because the FDA or the regulating bodies want to make sure they can see a pure effect of the drug. And so they confined the populations too narrowly in order to make sure that they knew what the drug, the side effects, and the efficacy. But what in the past decade, the whole industry has moved toward more diversity in male-female ethnicity. And I think also post-marketing data with real-world evidence is a massive push. So we're heading in the right direction, but it is a shame because, as you know, with the development of drugs, which is 10 to 15 years, it'll take us a while to have drugs that have been approved on a more heterogeneous population, but it's coming. It's also why Australia is quite attractive, by the way, because of our population and our proximity to China to do drug trials here.
All right, look, we're probably down to the last couple of minutes, so maybe we should jump to the last question. I'm trying to work out which is the best one. Is there anything that, and let me put it a different way. Is there anything that we haven't covered that any of you think we should have covered? And if there's no answer there, I'm going to jump to a different.
You got a few days there, Ian?
I'd do this all day.
I think I'm going to put a plug into any founders out there to try to follow people like Sylvia, Elliot, and David. Follow what they've done and try to orient yourself around their stories and what they're doing, because you need analogs. You need models for what's gone well. And clearly, these three have navigated the pathway and become very successful. Use analogs, use data, use examples, have mentors. Don't try to figure it out on your own.
That is a terrific way. So maybe we'll call it there, and and that'll allow us to jump into the networking maybe a couple of minutes early, because that is good fun. So audience, please do hang around and participate in that. So look, David, Elliot, Kelly, Sylvia, thank you so much. That was some great insights. I love doing this because I always get to learn as well. So I'm going to boot you off stage, not unceremoniously, and hopefully we'll see you in the networking, and then I'll just do a wrap, and then we'll go to the networking. So if you guys all want to leave, that would be terrific, and we'll see you in the networking.
Thanks, everyone.
While they're doing that, I will share my screen once more, and let's just do a bit of a wrap up here. All right, hopefully that is showing up. Yeah, thanks again to the panel. That was great, and thank you, audience, for the questions. So in a moment, we're going to switch on the networking on the left-hand side there. So the sessions is for a group conversation. So imagine being around a table. I think there's 8 people or 9 people that can be in a room at once, or in a room with audio and video. Plenty of people can watch. So if you're the lurker type, you can also just go in and watch. So that's pretty good fun. And then the one-on-one networking is also good. So you can just click that one. Next week, we are doing a session on customer growth or scaling your business, but scaling your business with sales in mind. And we've got a terrific panel, not necessarily household names, but Anna, James, and Pete, we know are terrific people, and they have done an unbelievable job of scaling the businesses they have been involved with. So some really, really good insights there. So if you're thinking about sales and how to scale your business, tune in, same time, same place next week. We wanted to announce this one. So Accelerate is one of our partners, and they have just announced a new program. And it's around helping younger Australians. So I think the last program was around COVID, if I remember that right. But this one's around helping younger Australians get ahead. So if you're starting younger, I think broadly Gen Z, so whatever age that is. So if you feel young, this applies to you. So if your startup is answering one of the 3 problems that you see on screen there, then this intensive program is going to be for you. And the shortlisted applicants will get a 2-day intensive program. They'll get mentoring and other opportunities, and I think the winner gets 150 grand prize. So it's pretty good and worth doing. So check out that link, bit.ly/accelerate2020. Almost done. We put a couple of new episodes out. We did a news special on Monday, so we had a great panel. So Craig Blair, Emma Weston, and Michael Betko. And we covered a bunch of different things. So the IPO market, Neuralink, a few other things like that as well. And we also did a great episode with Olympia from Goterra, based in Canberra. So all about robot farming using maggots. So it's fascinating business. So do check that out. She's an awesome founder. And that's a great story. So Faden did that one, and really, really good one. Thank you again to our sponsors, AWS, IAG, Pharmark Ventures, KPMG, and Macquarie Bank. So, all right, let me switch my slides off, and I think we are heading to the networking. That should be right, isn't it, Claire? So, yeah, look, thank you again to everyone. Thanks to the panel. I'm being your host, Ian Gardner. We're here to support you, and we'll see you in the networking. Thank you all. I'm out of here.